how tough my job is, Maribeth. I promise you, you're going to have all the time in the world this evening after our final keynote session to continue the conversations. I found that very useful because I was saying to my group that I'd never actually thought of starting my own business, and I had to make up an elevator speech, and I threw in a business idea. So we're starting that business, right? Good. Okay. All right, and if you're just joining us online, welcome back. We've just come out of a fantastic personal branding workshop. Sorry you missed it, but next time make sure you're in New York for Connected Women, right? Okay, we're going to start a panel discussion now on one of the key themes of this particular conference around creating and molding that workforce we were talking about a little bit earlier. I find it interesting what Maribeth was saying about women who come in to the industry and then they leave. Where are they going? That's what I want to know. Where do you go? Do you go? If you're going to start your own business, that's fantastic. Good, because then you can hire us in. But if you are completely leaving and going elsewhere, then tell me what you're doing. But hopefully we'll get some answers to that as we talk about it. And it's not just about young women, it's just women in mid-career. Maybe they're just changing direction, going elsewhere, growing, looking after their families. We'll talk about all of those things and how do we then retain those people. We're also going to be talking about, I think, something that's very key in the mobile industry, the fast pace, the evolution, the change that's taken place. And how do you then develop the skills that are needed to catch up with all of these new developments? Things like mobile health. We're talking about agriculture in our group a little bit earlier as well. There's mobile money. In fact, the GSMA is going to be hosting here in New York next week the NFC Mobile Money Summit. And that's been growing. I've been a part of that particular conference for a few years. And I'm always constantly amazed at the new applications that mobile has. But do we have the right skills to staff those jobs? That's what we're going to be talking about as well. So before we get into the discussion, we're going to get some introductory remarks from Marie Hattar, who is Vice President for Global Marketing Planning and Programs at Cisco. She leads a team that develops marketing strategies and plans to accelerate customer, influencer, and partner adoption of Cisco's product, solution, services, and capital portfolios. She has more than 18 years of industry experience. Please welcome Marie to the stage.
So first off, by way of introduction, I have two little girls. They're 9 and 10. And it's wonderful to come to a forum like this to see what are the possibilities and how we're going to enable them to be successful in this tech world. At Cisco, our vision is that amazing things happen when you connect the unconnected. And it's so wonderful to be here at a conference that's talking about connected women. But if you look at all of the things that we can connect to, there are over 1.5 trillion things that could be connected. And of that, 95 or 96% of them are consumer objects. And in the future, and why I think GSMA and what we're doing here in terms of mobility is so important, is that we as people are going to connect to over 200 possible objects. And that's going to bring and change the dynamic of how we work. And guess what? It's going to mean for the women, for the girls of the future that are growing up to be women in the workforce, that they're going to have to be very adept at understanding technology because so many of the jobs are going to be technology related. And what we call this vision at Cisco is the Internet of Everything, and it's really about connecting people. It's about connecting process, data, and things together. And that brings additional insights. And I think it creates a lot of opportunity for all of us here in the audience in terms of what we're going to do today and into the future and how we network and how we evolve. Now, the one common thing in all of this, the one constant that doesn't seem to change, is our talent. It's us. And it's what are we doing out there to ensure that we cultivate this talent and get them ready so that when they come into this workforce, that they are successful. And today, if you think about it, a lot of people sit there and think, we're going to stay in the company 5, 7, 10 years. Well, the average tenure of the workforce is changing rapidly now. It's really 2 or 3 years before people want to change and they want to evolve to something else. Similarly, the employers are constantly competing in terms of how do they get that best possible talent from a Gen Y or Gen X perspective. And they're fighting for the right skills and the right talent. So how is it that women can actually bring forward and highlight what's different about them? Mary Beth earlier did a fantastic workshop about having women brag. But you know what? That requires so much bravery. It really does. For some reason, as women, we struggle with that. And I loved when someone in the audience said, have an advocate. The best advice I ever got was because I'm a little, I don't seem shy, but I am a little shy about talking about how good I am. I'm really good at talking how good somebody else is. And so what I found is as I actually reached out to a handful of good colleagues and good friends, and I said to them, if you're not uncomfortable, when an opportunity arises, could you pipe up in whatever circumstance and say what a good marketer I am? And I was so fortunate that a handful of my friends basically said, you're a great marketer, you're fantastic. Of course we're going to be your advocate. And I know you guys may not believe this, but I once got an actual job offer from someone based on just someone else saying, oh yeah, she's the best there is, as a third reference. And they called me up. I didn't even know them. They were a general manager at Cisco, and they said, I really want you for this vice president of marketing job for our unified communications at the time. And I was like, but you don't even know me. He's like, doesn't matter. I've heard such great things about you. So what I want to say is it's great if you can develop that bragging skill set, but more importantly, use this network as a way to develop that connected women that will advocate you, that will stand up and say, yes, this person is fantastic. Because guess what? We as women are phenomenal advocates when it's something that's not us. So you know what? We don't have to change completely who we are to become more like a guy. And I think that's one of the themes that I want to advocate and emphasize. Too much in the business world, we're being told to change and act like a guy. And I want us to instead learn what is it that we can use as women and how we can leverage each other based on our strengths. A little bit earlier, I was sitting next to Cheryl, and we were talking about, how is it that women just don't really go into tech? And I was saying, you know what, my girls are 9 and 10, and do you know what they do? They do competitive dance, and they love it. And do you want to know why they love competitive dance? Because at this age, girls don't like boys. They want to be with other girls. And so if we really want to create an environment that allows women to get involved in technology, we've got to create an environment where they're not users of the technology. Because trust me, my girls are amazing at texting. They know all the apps on the iPad, but they're actually makers of this technology. So how can we create that forums so that we can bring them together to become the makers of this, but do it with other little girls that they can hang out with? Because guess what? As soon as they're 12, 13, 14, that's when they discover boys. And then it's cool to hang out with boys. But before that, they just don't like them. And so I think that's our opportunity. It's our opportunity to get them that young. And when we get them that young, that's how we can introduce more and more of them into the technology arena. So I really believe, talent is that game changer in technology. And one of the key talents that's going to be required into the future is collaboration. If you look at all the CIOs and CEOs out there, they will sit there and tell you the number one skill set that they're looking for from their future employees is how they can collaborate, how they can bring the teams together so that they can move the organization forward. The other thing that is really important is the changing nature of work in terms of how people actually do work or don't do work. In fact, a Gartner study recently said that 40% or more of the organization's work will be non-routine, up from 25% in 2010. The other piece of it that's interesting is the learning. How people learn is also changing. It used to be, I know at the school where my girls go, they used to do this STAR test, which was really, how do you learn things and how do you tell if somebody's gifted? But they're changing that because what they want to test for is less about the memorizing and more about how do you bring things together, how do you create empathic relationships together, and how do you become more innovative and creative versus just memorizing things and putting them down? So I think we as women need to understand this dynamic and figure out how we can channel it so that we can help create that next generation of workforce. Now, what are some of the critical skills in this knowledge economy? They don't change that much, but the difference, the one thing that I will highlight from what you see here, some of the 21st century skills, critical thinking, collaboration, creativity, global leadership skills, such as a global mindset, cultural awareness, a work ethic, or entrepreneurial skills, such as opportunity creation, autonomy, constant learning. Well, guess what? You know what? Those have been around forever. There's nothing new here. The difference is, guess what? That next generation has to have all of these, all of them together. And I think that's a big difference from what we have today. You used to get away with having one or two or three of them. But to be really, really successful, you have to integrate all of this together. And if you look at what your future workforce is, it is a mobile workforce. It is absolutely, this is just a typical class of some students at the University of Missouri School of Journalism. There's not a single person there that's not on their computer typing away. It's a very different mindset. I used to remember when I went to engineering school, and everything was closed book at the time, and you just had to memorize everything. And now it just changes the whole dynamic where information is all accessible to you, and you can get what you need right there in that one instant. But really, this is the future workforce that's entering our respective companies today. And their expectations are very different than some of the middle managers that we may have in the different companies. And in fact, a lot of middle managers are a little apprehensive these days because they're the ones whose skills are easily being replaced because the work dynamic is changing. And so one of the things that I often ask our senior leadership at Cisco is, what is it that motivates our talent? Because at the end of the day, we're still human. No matter how much we want to profile us and change us into different directions, we're still human. We want to know that people care about us. We want to know that we have a chance to grow, we have a chance to stretch, that we have an opportunity to grow at a pace that is good for us, not for someone else. And also to work for a place that is willing to invest in us, in developing us. And I think that's something we probably don't do enough of for the women that come into our companies. And I think even in terms of mentorship of younger girls to bring them into this technology arenas. And I would invite you guys to think about that and think about what is it that you can do for other women in your environments, as well as younger women coming through the pipeline. Now, in terms of the future shock, what are these expectations from that next generation of millennials? They want challenging and interesting jobs. They want things that are very dynamic. They're not used to just sitting there. They've been in this world that's so constantly interrupt-driven. There's a reason why we have a don't text and drive law out there. It's because they're used to multitasking and doing 5,000 things at the same time. And so to them, there's nothing more interesting than having my kid tell me that they can actually do their homework while they're texting, while they're watching How I Met Your Mother, all at the same time, and the only thing they haven't figured out is how they can integrate playing the piano at the same time, but I'm sure they're working on it. But essentially, it's just a very different thing. And what's interesting is, I think, for a lot of women, that's something we really excel at. And I actually encourage us to think about it as a difference between guys versus girls. Guys tend to want to focus. They can't do 3 or 4 things simultaneously. Now, some studies say, women can't either, but I think we seem to manage it a little bit better. And so I think that's a strength we bring to the table, and we need to figure out how we can better integrate that into what we do and how we create some of these opportunities for women. And so with that, what I'd like to do is share with you what we at Cisco are doing for women, and invite some of you who are service provider executives or leaders in your companies to come and join us in some of these. One of the things we do is on International Women's Day, what we actually do is we host a bunch of international events where we have a lot of our customers and partners come to Cisco offices, and we broadcast those, and we use this to celebrate the geographic, political, economic things that women have done. And so I'd like to encourage any of you guys, if you'd like to participate with us, it'd be great to have you there. The other one that we do is we have a Girls in ICT Day. And what we do there is we actually invite over 2,000 schoolgirls to come, from the ages of 13 and up to come and participate at Cisco in our Cisco offices and see what it is that we do in terms of technology. And really, the goal there is to just get them more interested in this area, because a lot of them are just like, no, I really don't want to go there. It's not, I really want to be a fashion photographer, or I want to, design clothes or something else. And this is really our way to actually excite them and bring them in and show them you can have a jet set career. You can do something really exciting if you take on and embrace technology. And so at Cisco, we recently had Sheryl Sandberg come in, and she wrote this wonderful book called Lean In. And many of you guys have used some of the metaphors from that about women standing up and just sort of not exiting till they're ready to exit. And there's all kinds of great advice here. But the one thing that I really liked in the book that got me motivated and going was a statement she said of, "This is where we are. If you want the outcome to be different, you'll have to do something about it." And I think that's what I encourage all of us to do, is to think about that statement and think about what is it that we want to be different and what is it that we're going to do about it. And so with that, I'd like to thank you and invite Suki back up to get us through the rest of the panel.
I absolutely love that saying from her, because unless we do something about it, no one else will, right? And I think that's part of what we're trying to do here, is to at least get some ideas going, and that's what the panel discussions are about as well. So don't leave me to ask all the questions. I'm not even in the mobile industry. So you're going to have to do something about it. I'm just here to facilitate your platform to do something about it. That's my job. All right, so let's welcome then to the stage the other members of our panel. Hyunmi Yang is Chief Strategy Officer at the GSMA, and she's responsible for a portfolio of strategic initiatives, including corporate strategy, GSMA intelligence, and strategic engagement with the wider ecosystem. You've already met Mary Beth Schoening, who's president of Fuchsia 5, and Cheryl D. Miller is founder and executive director of Zen Digital Europe, and she's a recognized digital social entrepreneur with 25 years of international experience in the tech and ICT sector. In fact, her work to promote science and technology to women and girls has been recognized by the United Nations and the European Commission. Please welcome them to the stage. Thank you so much for joining us here. And Hyunmi, maybe let me start with you. And before we talk about creating that workforce that's fit for this innovative and changing mobile industry, let's take a few steps back and look at the evolution of the industry itself. Where do we come from?
Okay, thank you very much, Siki. Hi, my name is Hyunmi Yang, working for GSMA as a Chief Strategy Officer. I would start talking about New York City before I start talking about the industry, because New York is such an impressive place where the diversity is always making things happen. And also, it's a place where I used to live for 15 years. I started my career here in New York, so it's like a second home to me. So I like to start talking with
I forgot about the clicker.
with New York. I got some great
Fire
pictures
me.
of New York, actually, so I
There
want
we
to
go.
show
Let's
it
do
to
that.
you.
Please do.
Okay, so New York has always been a city, a place where the great vision of growth was there, founded on the massive diversity of people, skills, culture, and foresight that enables even greatest projects to happen. And the next page. You probably have seen this picture somewhere online. This is a scene where then AT&T president in 1927 making the first transatlantic telephone call to London. And interestingly, it was about $80 for those 3-minute call, in today's money, of course. So quite expensive, but it was a historic moment in 1927. And then it went on. Around 1984, probably, the early cell phone call made by the notorious New York figure, Wall Street legend, Gordon Gekko, making this very famous cell phone call on Motorola Dynatec. It was 1984. And then this is, you probably noticed what this is, the iconic Apple store on Fifth Avenue. It's not only an icon for the telecoms industry, but also an icon for pop culture. So, now setting the New York City aside, today the industry is embracing massive change in a faster speed than ever. So the industry ecosystem really evolves around new areas such as mobile commerce, big data, and Internet of Things that we heard about already. So many new areas are being mobilized, and if you can think of any different vertical industry sector that are being mobilized, that means the whole of telecoms ecosystem is changing dramatically. And of course, telecoms company who used to be at the center of this telecoms ecosystem is now starting to think how we can adjust best in this changing dynamics. And GSMA, as an industry organization representing over 800 telecom companies around the world across 200 countries, and also more than 200 ecosystem companies, have a reaction to this, of course, working together with the telecom companies and the ecosystem company leaders around the world. With our response to this massive change and transformation was Vision 2020 for the industry. To do this, we worked with the leaders of the telecoms ecosystem around the world. We agreed on the mega trends that will shape the future of this mobile industry. And then we came to an agreement on the renewed focus of this industry, which came up, which shows on the right-hand side of what you're seeing here, in the digital identity, Internet of Things, mobile commerce, and the different future networks that will enable all this. And also at the same time, this sets the positive new tone for the industry because it gives us massive new opportunities. And then this telecoms industry transformation requires new skill sets, new expertise to have as the workforce to enable this success. So for example, software developers, UX designers, data scientists, not to mention all this content-related expertise in media, TV, music, and if you can, any vertical industry that you can think of, health, retail, education, government, any of these sector expertise are very, very crucial and useful in this telecoms industry to enable this new ecosystem. And so I look around a lot of telecoms industry companies and also ecosystem companies, and their HR departments already started looking for new traits in the new hires they are looking for. So for example, they are looking for agility, data savviness, the capability of harnessing the new power of consumers, better collaboration, and embracing the innovation. And you can imagine, the woman workforce sitting here could actually fit this profile very well. So just as New York City embraced all the massive change and innovation throughout the past century, the mobile industry is going to embrace this change for the next 5 to 10 years. And all of you here today are important part of this change. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Mary Beth, if all of us in this room, I won't exclude myself this time, if all of us in this room have those traits, then why are we having this conversation about getting more women into mobile?
That's a good question, but some of the things I've observed when I do some public speaking on sort of digital media, and I always ask the audience if they want sort of help or training on the use of digital media. And the older boomers always raise their hand. And I sort of see a skills gap between the boomer generation who are in positions of leadership and then the younger generation. So the boomers know how to drive business, they know the strategy piece of it, but they're not at all comfortable from a hands-on standpoint with social media and some of the emerging technology. So they're in knowing the nuances and the really ins and outs. Whereas the younger generations, the millennials, are really comfortable with it and really hands-on and understand the nuances, but don't know how to use those to drive business. So they don't know how to. There was a stage where all of the companies, all the CMOs were pressured by their CEOs to get Facebook presence up. So there was a stage where it was just get our image up and get presence up. And then the CEOs were really ticked off because it wasn't helping to drive their business.
Yeah.
So what I see is that the younger generations, if they could be could really get skills in terms of how to use that to drive business, drive membership, increase sales, sign up for newsletters, whatever it is a company's trying to do. And before we talk, I think it was, is it Lucy, our first speaker, was talking about reverse mentoring. So that has been a situation where there's mentoring scenarios set up with a younger person and an executive, and that's part of what the executive gets out of it. Yeah. And then the executive can mentor the younger person in terms of how to drive the business, how to apply the strategy and the goals of the company. So that's just one thing I see.
And in fact, Cheryl, I want you to pick up on that, because one of the things that when we had a chat a little bit earlier, one of the things you're seeing on the ground, or at least trying to do on the ground, is getting young girls to not just be users of technology, but also to be makers. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I would first make a very fine distinction about female millennials and male millennials and the level of our comfort with technology. And there's a persistent problem, I think, that we're all aware of, and regarding the presence of young women in tech and in STEM more broadly. You are probably the few, the proud in your industry, and if you look across the landscape, there are not a lot of you. And I'm afraid to say that the problem is not improving. Young girls don't want to enter STEM sectors. The women who are actually in STEM sectors are, it's like 1 in 5. We have a broader problem that the millennials, male or female, don't want to get into this sector. So we haven't talked about that, but that is really the elephant in the room, I think, is why is that problem there? What is it that we need to do? What do you need to do as an industry to attract those young people, male and female, into your industry? And I think, I do a lot of work that's outreach towards getting more girls excited about science and technology. We do things also to address the ecosystem problem, promoting getting more women into ICT and advocacy, recognizing your terrific work, putting you out there as role models to inspire more young girls to enter the sector. But I think one of the biggest problems is that the industries themselves don't see the value in that kind of effort. So this initiative in and of itself is an excellent step forward, and that I think we need to see more and more of. And on what the industry needs to do is, I think there are some key things that we've learned is take girls apart, make ICT fun and interesting, not just as users, but so that they can be makers of that, of actually create those tools, not just shrink it, pink it to make them want to buy it, but to get into the nuts and bolts behind it so that they can be. I mean, I think all of this movement in the workforce very much represents a feminizing of the workforce and a movement towards greater appreciation of soft skills. Not just more global leaders, but leaders who know how to collaborate, leaders who know how to understand clients, how to understand team working, and these are skills, for whatever reason it is, that we have as women. What we don't necessarily have are technical skills. We don't, and we always feel exposed when we don't have them. We also don't necessarily have the business skills, the skills to negotiate, the skills on strategy. So we work actually across the board, starting with young girls to get them interested in the areas of STEM, but we also work with women, young women, women in transition, career-age women, to inspire them maybe to become entrepreneurs in the tech industry, the few and the far between, and also advocating at the level of industry and decision makers so that I think what I've seen, at least from a European perspective, I'm based in Brussels, but obviously I'm American, is that the industry tends to say, education, we have a problem with education. There's not enough STEM education happening. Kids are not getting involved in those areas. And they're not owning it as a problem themselves. And I think that is really that's a huge action point, is that industry has to say, if there isn't a future workforce for us, that's a problem for us. So they need to be more involved, hands-on, in making that change.
Yeah.
And then, of course, to get more girls, to also acknowledge the fact that approaching girls, approaching young women, to get them engaged and to retain them is a sort of quick win. If you're looking to address a skills gap in Europe, it's a potential 1 million jobs by 2020 that will not be filled because we don't have enough talented people in the ICT sector. It seems like it's a quick win if you just do some clever branding, do outreach to young girls now who will be the workforce by then, and get them excited about these areas. So good work, GSMA.
And that's interesting. In fact,
Or of the
let's do
kind.
that.
Sorry, I monopolized.
In fact, talking about that, last year in Brussels, one of the suggestions that was put forward, or at least an effect that was talked about, was the CSI effect. What that particular program
I put that forward.
has
Thank
done.
you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Is, and that really, if we maybe we need a TV show about the mobile industry that makes it really cool for girls to be developing apps and so on.
I did a whole TEDx talk on this subject. Actually, the CSI effect, it's a different CSI effect, is that there was actually research done at the University of Oslo that demonstrates that young women who got into the forensic technology faculty did so because they watched CSI and were inspired to follow that area of work. So not only, I mean, it's a constant refrain from me, not only do we need real role models, we need real recognition of the excellent work that you're doing, but even fictional role models work.
Yeah.
So if we could just get to Hollywood or get Cisco.
That's your beg.
Cisco, my big ask, my beg, please. Or get the industry themselves to say, we're going to put money forward to create great content that promotes wonderful female role models in STEM to young girls, in cartoons, in movies, the more of that kind, the better it is, I think, for girls and boys, for all of us.
I was thinking MacGyver was my inspiration at
Me
one
too.
point. You know,
Totally.
just in terms of if
Totally.
we could have a female MacGyver to just, sort of.
I
it
have a
would just be-
screenplay. Just ask me. I've worked on this.
I'll join you. I'm good at production.
Okay.
Let's maybe take a few steps back before I give everybody else an opportunity to ask a question. Do we know what skills? I mean, you were talking, me about how the innovation, how things have changed, and how so much is being done on mobile today. So, what are these skills that are missing? What are we missing?
Well, the ICT sector, more narrowly telecoms sector, used to be known as very hardcore network operating companies, and that made, that created huge perception to women in the society that, oh, it's not an area for me, right? But now, all we talked about is the change in the industry and the new areas of expertise that we require. In order to do that, of course, the change first should start from the education. When young girls, when they decide to choose their major, to go to colleges, we should find a way to bring them, attract them more into science and technology areas, because the whole world is really, really short to fill this science and technology area more and more, and there's a huge demand, but the supply is far low. But then after that, the young women who are already in the workforce, I don't think you need to go to college again to get a job in ICT area. All you need to do is just making yourself more literate about some coding or some applications, very light technology education that you can get by taking some online courses, and all these things make you, available to think something creative, innovative, because what the industry is really lacking and looking for right now is innovation, the creative minds that can combine two different things which used to be separate. So I think that's where you can focus on.
That's getting them in. I'm very interested, Mary Beth. Why do they leave? Where do they go?
It's funny because I did research with top layers of men and top layers of women, and that, the answers differ, but they leave because they're not included in informal networks, the informal male networks. They leave because they don't have flexibility. They leave because they don't like the environment. They're not getting the rewards and recognition for the work they're doing. So they feel like they're working hard. Cheryl we talked about this exodus that I witnessed happening, and she said, oh yeah, I call that the 40 flurry.
The fed up female 40ers.
Flurry. So they're working so hard, and they say, I'm not
This
being
is your
recognized and
future if you're
rewarded,
not there already.
and I don't see, myself and my female peers being promoted at the same level.
Yeah.
They get bored with what they're doing. So there's this wonderful wordplay, sort of, which I think is what happens at that stage. If you take the word passion and break it down, it spells pass, on. So they get to that point and they're like, is this what I really want for me? So I think there are nobody ever leaves for one reason, but there are a number of reasons that sort of make up their exodus. And you asked where they're going. So they, I haven't checked the latest statistics, but they were starting businesses at twice the rate of men. So
I have
they
a statistic.
leave.
90% of single proprietor professional organizations in the U.S. are female led.
So that's where they're going.
That's
They
interesting.
exit and start their own thing. So why not just skip all the misery and start your own thing now?
Well, you
It's
do.
an idea.
I mean, I think
actually-
take what you can from being in the corporate environment and learn from, their advantages. And not entrepreneurship isn't for everybody, so we should have options in both camps.
Yeah.
I
you know?
agree, but it's interesting you say that,
Yeah.
in terms of that stat, because what's also really cool is that so many of small companies, SMB companies, are actually owned and operated by women, and typically those that are more successful than those that are not operated by
Depending
women.
on how you define success, they're definitely more resilient because of things that we talked about. Women go more carefully into entrepreneurship. We grow slower. We grow incrementally, positively, very consensus-oriented. Again, I can't say why, but it's just what is observed. And, for example, when the crisis hit, speaking from a European perspective, it was actually female-led companies that survived, and all the rest just... So there's something about sustainable growth and a feminine growth model. So go for it.
We're just saying.
Go for it.
All right. Any questions from the floor? And bear in mind, I can't see beyond the first row. There's one there. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Tim Ormath. I work for EG1. We're a small executive search firm based in London. And I think you're really touching on some of the critical issues here, particularly those young girls and women in STEM education courses across the world. I think Vicky can probably corroborate this, but I think in the UK, only about 23.5% of our ICT or mobile roles are filled by women. And I'd like to hear what you're all of it from the panel about the work that you're thinking about in terms of girls coming out of STEM programs and how we can partner with organizations or with them in the internship and apprenticeship timeline. That's where we're seeing the big gap, is that young women come in and they finish a STEM education, but they don't have vital apprenticeship or internship opportunities so that they go in and they can start developing a career across the technology spectrum. I do have a second comment, if you don't mind hearing it, and that is that it's also about how do we attract women coming back into the workforce in technology roles. What we're seeing in the executive search business, certainly in Europe, is that they're fearful of coming back in because they haven't been working for 5 or 10 years. They may have been raising a family or doing other things and feel that technology has moved beyond them. So how can we help them have opportunities so that they can realize that there are opportunities in ICT even if they've been out of the workplace for 5 or 10 years?
Okay, so that's at
two
levels
points.
there.
Sorry about
Very
that,
good.
but
No, that's
really
fine.
interesting conversation.
It's a similar question, I suppose, but
Yes.
you're talking about at the start phase, so the apprenticeship phase, and then mid-career, somebody who's left and now wants to come back. Yeah, fantastic. All right, let's start with you.
All right, so at Cisco, we've actually embraced bringing in interns earlier, whether it's from high school or actually in the colleges, and sort of, it serves a dual purpose because businesses are there for profit for the most part, unless you're a non-for-profit business. And so what this allows us to do is to bring them in as interns, and we've set up a series of these programs with different colleges and universities, and it works two ways. One, the students come in and they get exposed to the different technology areas. They get to see what the environment is like, and as a prospective employer, you actually get to scope out who's the cream of the crop that you actually want to come and join your company. So I think that's something many of the different businesses could actually embrace. And the other thing is from an internship standpoint, they're not that expensive. And what we were finding is that many of them were willing to come in and do an internship while they were going to school. So it's not just in the summer when they were looking for a summer job. They were actually wanting to come in 10 hours a week, and we could get them on some exciting projects. So we found that to be a really interesting way to get to see how they work. And more importantly, when the summer came and they wanted a job, they actually had a leg up. You looked like
How many girls do you have doing that?
We actually, we targeted actually more girls, believe it or not, which, because, that's something, a company that we're really anxious to embrace and keep pushing forward. So I would say we had about 70-30 in terms of the stats there.
Better than the average.
Yeah, we really did. Now, the second part of the question, I think part of that is on us as women. Again, it's sort of, I referenced the Sheryl Sandberg book earlier, and if any of you guys read it, one of the things that women tend to do is they want to tick off every capability in terms of being competent before they actually apply for the job, whereas a guy ticks off one of them and he thinks he can do the whole job and he's fully qualified. So I think, what happens is we put this tax on us that says, if we've been out of the workforce, we've decided to stay home with the kids, that we're just not capable, versus basically saying even if we have one skill set, that obviously we can do all of those things. And we forget how quickly we can learn. I mean, if you think about when you're at home and you're learning, you know, in terms of being a mother and taking care of, you're learning all kinds of things really, really quickly. I don't know what it is that for some reason we put up a barrier that says when we go to the workforce, just because we don't have all the skills, that we're not going to learn them very quickly. I have often found that most of my women employees are the fastest ramping in terms of learning the skill sets.
I think you have, I totally agree with you. I think you have to fight the talking yourself down part of it. You mentioned it earlier, and it happens in negotiating salaries where we talk ourselves down before we even get to the table. So you have to, just recognizing that that happens is awareness, and just don't let yourself go there. And it's about that confidence too, you know. So
If I can pick up on that self-confidence question, I think that that young girls struggle with that, especially in these fields in ICT, and there's a lot of stereotyping that has driven us into that pigeonhole, unfortunately. And also for adult-age women who are in transition, moving from one situation to another. And what we found in the work that I do, but also in research, is that women and girl-focused initiatives, so doing outreach only for girls on especially these topics, but also wrapping that in self-confidence and other personal and professional skills, but definitely technical skills as well, for girls, but also only for women. Imagine how much more readily you would go into a women's space where you could learn a bit about hacking or about, about science, as opposed to going into a hacker space, which you know is going to stink and be very dirty and do like a girls' night. No, that's not. So actually, we're developing a whole strategy on that topic that will address not only young girls but even women in transition who still will get some self-confidence about just knowing that little bit and knowing, oh gee, it's not actually that hard and I can make my way in this, and that coupled with all of my excellent communication and other team building and soft skills makes you quite an attractive
And a marketable
product in the
person.
market. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, let me talk about my own experience. Actually, I moved from financial sector to telecoms sector, and the reason why I got this offer from telecoms company back in Korea was because I was not from telecoms sector. So I would like to probably advise young junior people, women who are looking for ICT sector job.
There aren't any female engineers. That's part of the problem.
Right, and
Right.
they don't have to be engineers, as we talked about earlier. And you tick the box, of course, and there are a lot of boxes that you could not tick, but there are different boxes that I tick, and I can actually sell it as different value that I can bring to this new ICT industry. And I think that could be a very good formula that you can bring when you apply for jobs in ICT sector, because if you cite all this changing ecosystem and everything, the telecoms industry definitely lacks those expertise from different sectors, and you can sell it actually at a very high price.
So what you're saying is if your box is not there, create it.
Right. And actually, your box is there. If I can just throw in some more statistics. The 4 top positions in, I'm not sure about telecoms, but I'm sure this echoes the rest. The 4 top sought-after positions in Europe in the ICT sector are project management, systems admin, sales and marketing. The jobs that are rising to the top that are not being filled are the ones that are only marginally tech-oriented. And they are actually looking for, the clever companies are going outside of the engineering faculties and looking at
business skills and strategy.
business skills, English skills. I mean, the traditionally female-dominated faculties even, to find those ones And then you have companies like Etsy who are actually hiring people in by the droves, women. They're focusing because their client base and their customers are women. They hire them in and they train them internally. So they just say, do you tick 4 out of the 6 boxes?
Yeah.
All right, then we'll train you in the other 2 boxes. And that's maybe the wave of the future, and very interesting from the mobile perspective to think about.
I also think a lot of women or younger women are coming sort of from a backdoor standpoint. So I do a lot of work in healthcare, and it draws a lot of women because it's socially conscious and it's a helping career. So they're drawn to it. And then once they get in there, technology is such a pervasive, innovative piece of it that they find themselves exposed to it, but they don't go looking for technology. They get in the door because they get into an industry or company that is meaningful to them, whose purpose is meaningful, and then they sort of
So
get
industry could
exposed.
package it differently, I suppose.
Yeah.
So don't.
Marketing.
It's how you package the job. You'll get. That's how you get them in.
And don't say it's a male. In Europe, it still happens. You would be. I mean, maybe you know that.
Really?
Yes, it's like looking for males with this, or you say there's a website that actually pulls up these job ads that say, and he will have these skills and those skills and those skills.
There's one here. Have you got a microphone?
Yes, hi. First of all, I want to just thank everyone because it's such a wonderful conversation. And I did come from New Jersey, so it was a big deal to leave my 2-year-old at home and come here, take the train on a rainy day, nonetheless. One of the things I want to just talk about is about the subject that came up about women in transition, me being representative of that sector. For me, one of the things that I'm facing is not lack of courage, it's not lack of creativity, it's not lack of confidence. But the things that I've faced on numerous occasions is the fact that I find in the United States, every time a telephone rings and they say, hey, there is a job opportunity, are you interested? I turn around and say, I love it, this sounds great, I don't mind, I could drive 50, 60 miles. What have you been doing for the past 2 years? I've been raising my son, I took 2 years off. Oh my God, can you come up with a story? And
Raising my kid is a story. Sorry.
And I have
mean,
to tell you, on numerous occasions, since the day I decided to stay home for a short while till today, many of major telecom companies have contacted me. I've had numerous interviews to get to the point of, what have you been doing for the past 2 years? Come up with a list of things you've been doing. And I think the issue that I see, and this is a solution that I've come up with in speaking and trying to connect with the right people. One thing I realize is that as a woman, as a person who's looking for the right opportunity, I'm not looking for just mentorship. I'm looking for sponsorship through men and women, people that care deeply enough to say, I believe in you, I am your, I'm going to talk on your behalf, and I'm going to promote you, and I'm going to tell you how you can take the first step and walk you through. When you walk into a room, say, hey, this is such and such person, and she comes with great skill set. So that's one thing that I think a lot of people talk about mentorship. Mentorship is not enough. You need a lot more than that. Second, I think there is a gap in the market. And what I see is the connectedness. We talk about connected women. We come here today, and I appreciate this opportunity, and I appreciate having gone through this workshop because God knows it was such a hard thing to pick up the paper, and I was dwelling on what I'm going to put down on things. So it's been a huge step for me just to go through that stage. But what we are missing in the market is the digital media and tools that allow us to promote our needs and also be appreciated for them and bring us to the top of the list. LinkedIn is fantastic, but again, you have to fill in the gap of 2 years. People do look at that, so you do have to say, this is not the right tool for me. I believe some of the things that we do need, maybe somebody in this room can come up with it, is a way to bring all the women that are in similar situations, that have different needs, men or women, people that have skills, but they want to look for flexibility. They are looking for somehow bridging the gap that it has created in the market, and they want to make that bridge and come back to this, to back to their route and be in any other roles.
I wonder
Thank
if
you
there
very
are
much.
databases, aren't there? That one. Should we create a database?
Well, you bring up a good issue,
Yeah.
which is what do you do with that gap? And I know I'm from Boston, and the Deloitte Women's Initiative sort of started there, and they saw that as a problem. And so I think the women that leave to go raise their children, they try and keep in touch with and work for a day a week or something, so they don't opt out completely. So that's one strategy that they're actually formalizing, so that women feel comfortable and stay connected and don't, they still can be home honoring their families and raising their families too. So I guess it's a little bit of a balance.
All right, we literally have time for one more question, and then I'll get.
I totally don't agree with that, so I just want to
Okay.
get on the record.
You can
Don't-
have the
don't
you can-
compromise.
You can have the battle over cocktails.
Yes.
And I'll sit on the sidelines and watch. One more really burning question, if there is one. Yes, there's one here.
Thank you. So my question is, as we enter a certain industry, right, if it's not female-dominated or female equally dominated fields, that we'll get a sense of, oh, might not be for me, or things like that. So there's a lot of bystanders. Say, for example, if a executive that's a man that enters a room, then very aggressive, then you're portrayed as confident, get things done. But it's a woman, then you'll be classified as, oh, this person's so aggressive. It's a negative color shame on top of this. So my question is, from Maria, you talk about the Cisco, you guys brought in a lot of women into the firm. So from the career advancement perspective, where is a balance? Would you guys please just advise a couple of us? We're just wondering.
Okay, let's do this. As you respond, just add in your final comments and just respond to that, and we'll move that way.
Sure. Life is not fair. I will tell you, my constant feedback that I've gotten throughout my whole career is I'm too aggressive. They've used stronger words than that. And
Let's start with a B.
Yes.
Okay.
And life is not fair. And my constant feedback is soften up, soften up, soften up. And I take that to heart, because part of being more collaborative, if you want, is to walk in someone else's shoes. And I think, life will never be fair. And so as much as we want to change it, and I think over time, as we get more and more women in more senior positions, it will be okay. I actually love it when I have aggressive women in my team. I worship them. I want more of them.
That's right.
But that's me. I can tell you they do make some of the men uncomfortable. But till we get more women in there, life isn't going to be fair. So what I would say, in terms of my concluding remarks, is embrace that there are all kinds of different people out there, and just be sensitive as you're navigating your career to look at it from their perspective. And if you have to adjust a little bit, don't compromise, but adjust if you need to, so that you can achieve the goal that you're driving for.
All right. Yinmi, final word?
Yeah, I second what Marie just said. I am also, reaching this position in this sector. I get these comments a lot. You're aggressive. Well, in my personal life, I'm not an aggressive person at all. So I don't know why I'm called aggressive at workplace, but that's the reality. And I think it's also, in an organization where it's mostly male-dominated situation, men are not used to seeing women, pursuing things, pushing things for success, and so it makes people a bit uncomfortable probably, and they're different than the women that you see at home or outside. That's why I think the notion of aggressiveness comes. So I don't think it's something to really worry about, because as there are more and more women in the workforce, it will become something normal. And my closing comment probably is just repeating what I was saying before. There's endless, boundless opportunities in this industry. It's moving so fast, changing so fast. Things are being converging. All different things are converging. So there's opportunities that if as long as you just put yourself out there, there's always opportunities, and don't hide behind what you are used to. And I think you can be successful.
So, sort of building on the same point, but I think what I've observed is when men get criticism, they don't necessarily take it to heart and stew on it and feel like I offended somebody, and they just kind of let it roll and go do their things. And I think we need to sort of learn from that. So you might be called aggressive, but if in your heart you know what you're doing in your job and you feel it's the right thing, then stick with it and try and move on from it and not let it pull us down. And eventually, your results and your performance are going to speak for yourself. So you just got to go with what you know is right and go with your heart. And that's sort of my comment, closing comment.
Cheryl?
How many of the women here have been called aggressive in the workplace? or intimidating?
Yeah.
How many men have been called aggressive in the workplace?
So it's too small a sample
Actually,
set.
Yeah,
It's not fair.
But actually, this is one of the things that I saw Sheryl Sandberg ask in the Girls in ICT Day gathering we had at the European Parliament. And what she says is, that means you have excellent executive management skills. So stop calling each other aggressive. Stop calling yourselves aggressive. Just accept it as this is a talent that you have. And there is where I think I have more of a problem with the mindset that we are facing. And I think we should look at it that way. The challenges are not inside of you. They're actually out there. So, and it makes me cringe to think that a woman has to be ashamed or cover up or be stigmatized about the fact that she was at home raising her children, because that's the most noble of pursuits. In fact, especially if that's what you choose to and want to do. So I think it's pathetic that our society expects us to do that. I want you to ask that question. Why do I have to make those excuses? Actually, you don't. And that's where I want to see a change. And I think if we accept it and accommodate it all the time, the mindset is not going to change. Why is it that me acting how I want to in the workplace is considered aggressive? And why does it make men uncomfortable? Why does it make men uncomfortable? Why does it make our male bosses uncomfortable? Why can't we just be women and do what we do? I would like a whole conference on the topic of the why. Why women with skills? Why women in leadership? Why? Let's think about that, and let's ask next time that we have a quota so that we can actually ask the men to sit up here and address these questions as well. And that would be my last comment.
Thank you so much.
Thanks. Did you label this, or did they label it for us?
They labeled it for me.
my
If you
God,
want, I don't have it. I'm going to take it.
I think that's a sign. It's a sign. Can you still hear me? Yeah. All right, there we go. Even the microphone is saying cocktail time. I hope you really enjoyed that. I certainly did. And I'm sure the conversations are going to be continuing for the next couple of hours as we have our networking cocktail. So that really concludes today's formal proceedings. We're not chasing you out. I hope that you will stay with us and let's continue having our conversations. Tomorrow, we have an early start. So I'm going to ask, please, 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 everybody be on time in the morning. We're starting with a workshop, first thing, with Joan O'Connor. is 8:30, at 8:30 until 9:30. And then we're going to hear from Anne Bivero. I'm very excited about that particular fireside chat. That is at 9:30. So if we can all be here on time in the morning so we can start on time, and some of us have planes to catch, right? So we can end on time. All right, and I look forward to seeing you, of course, tomorrow, but you heard that. It's cocktail time.